Thrilled to get to see this with you, first of all. Thanks for joining us for a little Q&A.
And usually I'm interviewing you, so that's awesome.
It's a nice reversal. I gotta say, first off, there's something just about the ambition and there's something that you watch when you see this. You look at as they get to that finish line. I mean, the courage the guy had to do what he did with all those folks and with everything on the line, and then double down and film it all. I mean, it's just, when you think about the courage that takes, it's inspiring. It's also, that's the thing I'd be more nervous about. But, in looking at all this footage, what drew you to have to tell the story? I mean, it feels obvious, but, you had to see this and think, we got to do something amazing with it.
Yeah, I mean, it's true, he did double down, and that was part of the reason to tell the story, is because he was, on the TV show every what was it? I don't know how many times he was on that TV show that year, but it was a lot. And, the fact that he could just be out there being a public speaker, and then when you cut to the real world in the dirt and things were happening and delays and everything, and it was like these two different worlds happening at the same time, and I thought that was an interesting story in and of itself to parallel those. And then I think just to scour the archives, and we went to the Multi-Family Museum, we went to the Disney archives and television archives, and we just kind of looked everywhere for sound bites that would fit the narrative, that would actually build a story structure through it. And we try to get voices that you haven't heard that often, people that you don't hear from that often, and really just try to bring heart and humanity to this whole story, and to Walt himself, and let them speak about him, and then let him speak about himself, and counter some of the feelings that were out there about him, whether it be money or being dead or what have you. I mean, he took the risk of a lifetime. I mean, really, this was probably the most dangerous decision Walt Disney ever made.
Absolutely, and I love his mission towards the end of the film, he talks about money. Because I think there's something, it speaks to so much of who Walt was. It's not just something to be piled up and counted, it's going to do something with it. I think obviously, this was his biggest gamble of doing something with it.
I mean, today I was talking to the sales and marketing forum, and I was talking about how his first bankruptcy, it wasn't really bankruptcy, but his first financial failure was in partnership with my grandfather. Iwerks Disney Company when they were in Kansas City. And it was a short-lived startup, but it was their first failure. And then the second one was Labgrams, and that was his first official bankruptcy. And then, just kind of continued. He just kept risking it every time, everywhere he went. He just kept starting something new, risking it, and this was definitely the biggest gamble.
Absolutely. In thinking about, putting together a film that's largely based on archival material, how did you navigate that as a filmmaker? Because it at least gives you some bounds, but it also, I'm sure, constricts areas of the storytelling as well. How did you approach that?
So when we were looking at this footage, as I mentioned before, with the Imaginary Sturm, and I wanted to also give credit to Tony Baxter too, who really did pull this out from the archives way back, and also just has shown it around a little bit. But you've only seen it in these sort of low resolution reels and whatnot. And so when we got this, it was kind of new to us. It was in these binders, we didn't know what they were, we can transfer them, and so we transferred them out, and when we started going through them, they were all just reels of different footage. It was like they were work prints or something. And so you have all these shots out of sequence and out of location. You didn't know what mound of dirt this was here and what time frame it was, and a lot of these things didn't have slates. So we really had to almost forensically match frame all the different shots and do the best we could to keep it in the right sequence. And we had this amazing brain trust, Tony and Don Hahn and Tim O'Day and Tim O'Day, Tony Baxter, Jonas Rivera, Pete Doctor, and we screened for them, and they would give us input as well. So I knew I had Disneyland brain trust, and then of course the archives. Becky Klein, Steve Benny is here, thank you, Steven. Just the whole gang and Disney Archives, Kevin Kern. You guys were invaluable to this project. I can't thank you enough. It wouldn't be here without this amazing team of experts. And, it just really started to come alive and come together. And I think it was really, it took a lot for us not to try to go to talking, I didn't want to be talking heads. I never wanted to interview anybody. The whole thing was about living in this everyday footage and not cutting it. It was easy to have people would say, oh, cut to the still there's some great still photos behind the scenes of the wall, this one spot. Because there were photographers as well, but we really wanted to just live in the footage by these cameramen. Travis Hill and everybody, these guys were really capturing history. And so we really wanted it to live out in that way.
Well, I think that's what makes this so unique, is that there's just moments in this where you're in a moment, and it's things we've just never seen before. And I think that's, we've all seen a lot of the clips of Disneyland, making Disneyland. This feels like it unlocks a whole other treasure trove of content we just haven't seen.
Yeah, I mean, it did, and I think just that was the gift that we were given. Well, we came up with this idea to do it, and we were in the editing room, like, well, give credit to my editor Mo and my co-producer Mark Catalina, because they were sitting in there going, man, this would be an amazing story if we could just play out. And what we realized was that, when you look at the reels themselves, you're just looking at shots, but they're all out of sequence. So once we cut every single shot up and we put it in bins, and you go, okay, well, this is the Mark Twain sequence. Well, you realize there's all these different angles, and all these neck shots, medium shots, details. And so once we started building those scenes, then we thought, okay, we've got a story.
You mentioned your grandfather, obviously your family, for those who don't know. Leslie Iwerks has a deep history with the Walt Disney Company at large. How does this then hit in different ways, given your family's connection, the emotional connection we all have to these parks, Disneyland specifically? As you thought about bringing this together, how did that emotionally hit for you, and how do you, how does that show up in the film?
It's funny, as a filmmaker, I'm just focused on what the great story is, and it's only later that I go, oh, well, yeah, my grandfather was a designer, co-creator of Mickey Mouse, and also Lucky Rabbit, and all this was premiered at Disneyland, and, largely Mickey Mouse was such a big part of Disneyland, and so that is huge. But I guess I think about, well, I'll tell you one little story that you don't know, which is that my grandfather at this time, right, let's say about 8 months prior to Disneyland opening, was stopped in the hallway by Walt at the studio. And Walt said, I'm thinking about I'd like to figure out a way where we could take the widescreen film format and turn it into a 360, like complete circular theatrical experience. And I said, well, give me a couple of days, let me think about it. And he came back to Walt and said, I figured out a way. 9 16mm cameras, all interlocked in the same drive, that can shoot the same sequence in 360. And Walt said, go do it. And so they literally had to build in 8 months, design an entire 360 camera system, a projections theater, 360 projection theater, and make the movie. And so my dad was a camera technician on Tour of the West, which was the film that showed it, in the Circle Round Theater. That opened in Tomorrowland on opening day. So, when you think about every single other deadline that was going on behind the scenes, not just construction, but all the media that went into this and everything else went into this, everyone was racing behind the scenes, but they were innovating like crazy.
There's a moment in the film where Leslie Iwerks says, this is the part where we should nervous just because the schedules and the deadlines. We talk about speed, a lot of the engineers in the room know that we're trying to move fast and break things sometimes, but you compare it to what they were doing back then, to your point, it was, wake in the morning and do. Bill Dr. Bob talked all about that. It's like we didn't have PMs recording, we just got up and we knew what we had to do. It's fascinating to see the process. As somebody who's looked a lot at craftspeople and creatives in many different iterations of the Walt Disney Company's history, how do you see that show up today? How do you see some of the spirit of the Imagineers from the 50s show up in the Imagineers and the development that you see in the world today?
Well, it's a great question. I come to ask you that same question, but I don't know. I just feel like it's still there. It's this continuum from to think about how Walt Disney looked at this dirt lot, 160 acres, and said, I'm going to make that the happiest place on earth. A dirt lot. Of all places in the world, that's going to be it. And then from there, it grew out of there, and now it's 12 theme parks around the world. And it brings tears to my eyes when I travel around the world and I think about this one man's vision and how he led all these people to follow in line behind him, to galvanize and mobilize along, with a singular vision to bring about the happiest place on earth. And then we now, 12 parks later, 70 years later, it's like, what an amazing business plan. That really wasn't a business plan that much. As you saw, 10% of Disneyland was being built as it was starting. I mean, the plan. So to me, I think it was the DNA of all of this, and it was also the DNA of happiness. Because happiness was his business model. And I think that he really believed in his heart of heart that happiness is future-proof. And there's a continuum there, and that's what the Imagineers continue to do, and that's what the values that Walt instilled in the people that were working there at that time: hospitality, cleanliness, quality, detail, fun. Just don't skimp. And that's the thing that continues to this day is Imagineers and the cast members. You're treating people with the highest level of respect. The world looks at Disney as a benchmark for hospitality and happiness. And we need more of that right now, guys. We need a lot more of that. So to me, I think this is the takeaway, is that look what he did back then, and we can all continue to do it now.
I think, you said the word DNA. I think that's one of the things that, because of that foundation that was built back then, that we can do anything. We can build a new park on top of a dirt patch, a year. I think that continues to be so much of that rock of what engineering or operators do, but it was started with that mentality that we saw so tenaciously executed. We're going to open it up in a moment, so if you have a question, we've got some folks who have microphones, and we'll have folks ask us some questions. But how does it feel to have finally be out? You've been on a couple screenings.
Yeah, it's been a lot. Just your reaction tonight really meant a lot. I think we've just been hunched over a computer for a long time and seeing it in our own little vortex. So it's amazing to have had the reception that we've had. And we're just our own worst critics, so we're trying to make this as best it can be and live up to this footage. I look at myself, I'm just a messenger for these cameramen who I think wanted some filmmaker down the road and maybe find this footage on a dusty shelf and put it together the way they intended it.
And here we are, 7 years later.
It's pretty, that's what I'm proud of, is to be able to do that, be the one that use your footage and put it together.
Thank you for doing that for all of us and for the world to get to see. Let's open it up to questions. I think we've got a mic over there, or we've got over there. Anybody, there's one down front, it looks like, here.
Hi guys, how you? Sorry. Hi guys, how you doing?
Good.
Sorry, this is cool. Question for you. As someone who edits a lot of their content, and one thing you've been talking about a lot is the audio, the visual. What's one scene that you find like personal enjoyment in? Because there's a lot of cool scenes. Like there's a lot of moments like, holy cow, like look what we're looking at. But like for you personally, is there like one that sticks out that you're like, that's sick?
I like a lot of it, but there's weirdly the detail shots, like when they're sculpting the brick. I just love that shot.
Yeah.
It's like so intimate and so real. And I swear when I walk down Main Street again, next time I'm in Disneyland, I'm just gonna appreciate this brick so much more. But I love that Tom Sawyer scene with, pulling the boat. It's like, they thought that was a good idea. It's just awesome.
Yeah, this is the scene with, I think our safety and construction
I really like climbing all the beams in Tomorrowland. You can pay me to do that. Imagine smoking a cigarette, walking on that tiny little beam. It blows my mind.
Safety is a key here. Who else? Any other questions? Right here.
Was there ever a time when you made a ride and that then you had an issue and you had to fix it and it took a while
This isn't being recorded, right? We are always iterating on our attractions. You know, what was interesting actually in seeing the film was they said that they just started running a ride a week before. I think it was the Mark Twain and the train went a week before the opening, which is we were laughing to ourselves because nowadays we have sometimes months and years of testing beforehand. So yes, we definitely iterate quite a bit. We tweak, and that's the beauty actually of our medium is that these things last for a long, long time. So we always can go back and toss things or do things over time. So yeah, makes people come back too. What else? There's one I think up in the upper deck here, kind of in the middle.
There's a couple right here, and then we'll get a mic up there.
Great. We'll start here first.
This guy? Okay. As a storyteller, obviously you had this idea in mind of what the core story would be about, right? But was there anything in the discovery process with the footage that you were like, that's a piece of the story we weren't expecting to tell, or we didn't think we would find? Because I think a lot of us, especially like when we're building content, we go in, we have an idea on what we're gonna do, but then something catches our eye or something takes us by surprise or a detail that we didn't notice at that moment. And I know you mentioned about the brick, but was there anything in that footage, I guess, that just gave you that extra piece of storytelling to deliver?
Well, I guess more of the audio bites. You know, I think that one bite from Walt with the rocket ship saying, you know, talking about money and that his whole goal is to keep doing things with it. To me, that's the pinnacle of the film, and that's the pinnacle of the DNA of who Walt was and what he did. And I think that surprised me because I didn't know that quote, and my editor Mo and Mark kind of did this rough cut, and they wanted to have me leave them alone before I saw it. And when they showed it to me, I just started crying, and I thought, oh my God, this is so touching because of just what he said there, and I hadn't heard that quote before. So I think that's probably my favorite line in the film. But I think it's just seeing the sound bites. When you're looking at them on paper, and you're building them on paper, it's just so much, you get it, but until you put it to picture, and then until you get the soundtrack, you know, then you start really feeling something that it's working in the right way. And so I don't know. I just think it's a mix of everything, you know. But usually I try to find one or two key sound bites that are in the film or in the episode or whatever it is that are going to be your anchors, that are going to be the lead up to or the payoff to or what have you. And I think that was my favorite.
Sure, really kind of the emotion driver, right? Like in those moments. So that's amazing. Thank you.
I think what's amazing about that moment, by the way, just to compliment what you were review is you're hearing that quote, which is very much the thesis of the film, and you're watching a rocket ship go up vertical while cars are blazing down the 5 freeway. And you gotta think of just the people who are driving, seeing this rocket ship go up. I mean, it's just a wild, you know, the audacity, the facts of the ambition. It's so well juxtaposed in that.
Well, when you also think it's kind of symbolic of just, you know, he's building this rocket ship, and he's talking about investing his money time and time again and not worrying about bankruptcy, and giving it to make the happiest place on earth. And I mean, I don't know to say, but who's doing that today? And outside of Disney, continuing to create really cool, fun experiences for the world that, as you know, they've always said about, or Walt always hoped that when people come into Disneyland, they'll leave feeling a little bit better than before they arrived. You know, so, you know, I think that's just a really special goal and achievement.
Did we get up to the middle there?
I think we have two more, one up here and then right back to the
Great.
mic.
Okay.
Thank you. We're celebrating, obviously, Disneyland's 70th anniversary this year, and we're celebrating celebrating Disney World's 55th anniversary this year. I know in past interviews you talked about how the Iwerks story brought you closer to your grandfather, and then you talked about going through the back doors into Disneyland itself as a child with your own father. What is it like for you now to walk through the streets of Disneyland or through these theme parks? What do you see? Like, what is your vision of what you see when you walk down? Can you walk down and just be joyful and happy? Or is it nothing but you see your father's works or your grandfather's works? Or do you see just Walt's work? And then secondly, when are we going to get a Walt Disney World documentary like this?
Okay, well, the executives in this room heard that last question. And I would love to hear it. There's a lot more to that than there was for Disneyland, so, from your lips to God's ears.
Jesus, check.
You know, when I walk to Disneyland, I don't know, it's wild. I feel like this continuum since my grandfather, who as you all know, I didn't know. I was one when he passed away. I have one photograph of the two of us together. And, but I do feel like he was with me internally as I grew up. He was such an inspiration and somebody I totally looked up to, and somebody I was sort of like, God, can I ever live up to him? You know what I mean? He was so accomplished. And at one point in my career, I just said, you know what, you're never going to be those people. Just be yourself and do whatever you want to do and do it the best you can do it. And my dad gave me that advice, and so we all, my dad, my grandfather, me, my cousin Mike, who's an Imagineer, I think we're all just about quality and just doing our own thing, but doing it the best we can. And I think for Mike and I, anyway, we're just thrilled to be working with Disney. And I've done a lot of different projects with different companies, whether it be Warner Brothers for the 100 Years of Warner Brothers documentary, or DC, thank you, DC Comics, or Hearst, or bunch of them, different brands. But when I come to Disney and I work here with everybody, it's like it's in my blood, it's in my DNA, and I just feel like it's a family, And I'm just so honored, and I'm just thrilled to be the one to continue telling stories and finding these stories that you all would love to see, and I would love to see. I'm as much of a Disney fan as you all are, so to me, if it's a good idea, I want to share it.
Sounds like there's one more in the offer. Right here, the last question.
All right. So this was a fantastic film, so thank you for creating this and all the hands that were a part of this. Disney has been such an important part of my story. I'm a former Disney cast member, former Walt Disney World ambassador, worked for the company for 12 years. And so Disney has really permeated, I think, everybody's life in here. Current cast members, former cast members, Disney lovers, Disney fans. And we've talked a lot about your family's legacy, of your dad. But I'd like to hear from you, what do you want your legacy to be? As we heard Walt Disney say, it's not about the money, it's about the smiles that they leave. As long as we've done that, we've done our job. What do you feel that your job is as you go forward?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think that I just love telling stories, and I feel like I love stories that need to be told. And I want to encourage people to continue telling stories. I started with the film about my grandfather because I felt like it was, it was a story that needed to be told. I worked up the courage to go to Roy Disney and get the funding, and the Disney company funded it and allowed me to tell us a version of the creation of Mickey Mouse, and that had never been done before. So I think, it's given me courage. That really felt like 1999 gave me a lot of courage, and then that led to the Pixar story with Steve Jobs and John Lasseter, Ed Catmull saying, tell our story, and then it was George Lucas, Industrial Light and saying, tell our story, that was first, tell our story. So I think in Warner Brothers, so I think there's something fun for me to distilling these massive, titans and leaders and innovators, and distilling it down into the why and the how, and what is it all about, and where's the heart in what they were doing, and what was the influence on what they did. And so I want to continue making films. I'm working hard are to segue to live action with a couple of projects I'm writing now. But I will continue to do documentaries and other projects that I hope will continue to tell stories that have never been told.
We all had incredible vision back then, you know, to be documenting all this work is leading up to, you know, arguably the biggest scandal of his life. And I think, you know, it's now obviously, it's for us, we get to see it. And I just, on behalf of Imagineering and on behalf of Disney at large, I want to thank you, because I know you're doing that. You've done it for the Imagineering story, you've done it now with this, and there's more projects I know to come for this and Chaco. So just deep gratitude, Leslie. I think you've done such a masterful job taking what Walt set out to do when he was contemporary, when he was building these parks, and you know, you're doing that for us as Imagineers and helping to further our stories for audiences and for those who one day want to be you know, filmmakers or Imagineers or whatever it might be. So thank you.
Well, thank you. I mean, honestly, I feel like when I look back at these photos of Walt and Hub, back when they were teenagers and in their 20s, and, you know, all throughout their life, even into their life, looking at old photos of drawing, playing crazy, you know, drawings and stuff like that, they were lifelong collaborators. And Walt and my dad knew each other. And I feel now that I know Walt too. And that's what has meant the most to me, is that I've been able to spend some time, immerse some time into his life, and to give back to him in a way, hopefully that people will be inspired by and continue to create